Let's go. Torah on Mishpatim. Page Ayin Test, second column. The bottom of the close to the bottom of the new paragraph. Okay, the last thing the Alter Rebbe is explaining that if all doesn't work, so then you got to do what Chana did, but this Pal Chana al Hashem, and he explained Yud Kevavke is a level of world, and then sometimes you need to have Rachmanis, and the level Ato Berachmecha Rabim in a level of Al Havaya higher than Yud Kevavke. You have to daven for Rachmanis. And he says the last thing we didn't finish yet, just the last few lines before the end of the paragraph. He says, what is our request to Bakosh Seinu? We tell Hashem, we don't even understand the Rachmanis it is on us. So therefore we say, you, Rachmecha Rab Racham Aleinu. We don't even understand how down and out we are, how down and low we are. You're the only one that understands it. So therefore have Rachmanis on us. Okay, so he says now, Avram became old, coming in days. Now seemingly it's redundant. If you're old, you're coming in days. If you're coming in days, you're old. What does it mean? So Peter Zalkin, Zemashokon Chachma. Mara says, what is the definition of Zalkin? It's like three words. Zeh Kana Chachma. The one who acquires wisdom. The Gemara says that Ziknei Talmidei Chachamim, scholars of Torah, the older they get, the more their mind is settled. In other words, the better the head. And if not, they become senile. What does it mean, what's the expression? It should say the brains become better. What does Misyasheves Aleh mean? It becomes Avei, the big face would be Yeshiva Das. What Yeshiva Das means calmness, understanding. Yeshiva Das means settled. It shouldn't be one day like this, one day like this. The problem with people is everybody's mixed up. I don't know, this, that, you know, like you're right, there may be this way, maybe this way. Yeshiva Das, by the way, which is the level of Das, it's interesting. Chassidus explains that Das is actually, people have dilemmas. Should I do this? Should I do this? What does it take to figure out which one you should do? That's Das. Das understands, not, the pros and the cons. That's Seichel. Seichel, pros and cons. Das understands the down-to-earth aspect, which one is the, we say somebody's a bar Das, means they know exactly what they want.
What is the difference between Shiva Da'at and Harchabat Da'at? Harchabat Da'at.
What?
Harchabat Da'at, meaning
expanding.
You learn before.
Harchaves Adas. No.
There's a big difference, no?
Yeah, you keep broadening the seichel. Kach kitzarchi is kol hayamim shleimim. All the days have to be complete. K'meisha katzid b'zayad. The Zayad says, Avram Zaki, Avram became old. Ba Yamim means every day of his life was complete. He didn't waste a day. Vayamim shenaslim min hashamayim, and the days which the person is given from heaven. The chayes b'am yimei shnei sov, that were given. Let's say a person was given 120 years. Why did Hashem give you 120 years and this person 130 years? Because you have 120 years to fulfill your mission. No spare time. If you're going to waste time, like he says, Hashem does not give us even one extra hour over the amount of time he evaluated. Okay? Bottom line is, Hashem gives each of us an amount of life. Every day has to be reckoned for. That's what tzaddikim do. Every minute is precious. Every minute they utilize to the fullest. From this, the intellectual person needs to realize to be a person of reckoning, to make a reckoning of every action, speech, of every day of our life. What is it says this? Yamim, what is time? Time are the garments that allows the person to do mitzvahs. In order to do a mitzvah, you need time. So time is the garment that allows the person to do a mitzvah. That a person learns and does every day. With these garments of time and place, by the way, that's how you're able to fulfill mitzvahs. Mitzvahs can only be fulfilled in time and place. Lulav has to be on a certain day, Shabbos has to be a certain day, Tefillin has to be a certain time. And this, like he said before, it comes from the Eretz El Yena. That Rebbe's explained, just like there's an earth down here that produces, there's a heavenly earth that produces Ava V'yira. And he says, K'av shalem mit pashti atera, ve'ein magila mizeh shum Ava V'yira b'shas ma'isi. He says like this, even though somebody learns, and they don't create Ava V'yira in them. They learn, they do what's right, but they don't create this love and fear. It's still Torah, it's still the planting from above. And from there you get the level of tzedakah and abundance of chesed, meaning this tremendous love and the neshamas of Yidden to illuminate with them in these garments. Okay? Meaning, the Alter Rebbe says, even if you don't feel the Avavira, but you're still getting it. Because Torah plants it, sometimes you have to wait a little longer for the produce. To ripen sometimes takes time. Don't hold your breath, sir. And that's what the pasuk continues. Okay, so what does the pasuk say? With the Alter Rebbe, because we're almost done with the Maimer. The Alter Rebbe, the Maimer is on the pasuk. Speaks in the pasuk before that if you keep Torah mitzvahs, you won't have a meshakel, a woman who miscarriages, or a barren woman. So he explained what does that mean in the spiritual sense. Makarim, barren, means you don't have children, you don't create Ava V'yira. Meshakela means you create Ava V'yira, but they don't last because they're not real. Therefore you basically miscarry them. So he says, Daveda is Torah mitzvahs to make a keli. If that doesn't work, but this Palachad Allah Hashem Yaskor Achmonis. And then the pasuk concludes, as Mispa Yomecha Amali. After the Torah says there won't be any Meshakela V'akora, there won't be any miscarriages, there won't be any barren women, then the Torah said, Mispa Yomecha Amali. What's the connection? He says, what does that mean? Kine Bechin Esayamim Atzmam. The days itself. Shehein Elavush and Motal Alecha La'aseis, and we have to make the days. In other words, like there's the mitzvah of Sfiras HaEmer. What's the mitzvah of Sfiras HaEmer? The mitzvah of Sfiras HaEmer is literally counting time. You don't do anything. There's no action, so to speak, you do a mitzvah. The mitzvah is counting time. What does it mean, counting time? Counting, we learned already, when you count something, it's precious to you. That's why it never becomes bottled. Things that are counted don't become bottled. So he says, what does it mean? Mispa Yomecha. Who makes the days? The Jew does, by utilizing the time properly. Like it says in the Zohar, the pasuk of Shemai Misaprim. Pirish, what it means is, it shines. Umenatzitz is like nitzutzim, sparks. Kisipurian, like sapphire. Chassidus explains, when it says Hashemayim Misaprim Kveit Kel, simply means the heavens tell the glory of God. Now, how do they have a mouth that tells? So obviously, Misaprim, again, they don't have a mouth. Misaprim means to tell, again, means to reveal, to shine. Evan Sapir, a sapphire stone. Why is it sapphire? Because it comes the word sapir, the measure says means shining. Hashemayim Misaprim Kveit Kel means the heavens reveal the glory of God. Look at the vastness of the universe. It reveals the glory of Hashem. As Mispa Yomecha Amali means that we have to shine into the days this revelation of Eretz Elyono, from the earth above. And he says, not only in Asay Teiv, by doing more mitzvahs, but even in the level of Sur Meirah, the Pasuk said, "Vasireisi machla mikirbecha." I'm going to remove illness. Illness is negativity. That's negative things. Sur Meirah. Hashem says, "I will remove the evil from you." That means the illness that is stuck into us. So number one, a person has to do two things. They have to bring down Kedusha, and they have to get rid of the evil that exists within them. Okay, so the Pasuk says, when you keep Torah mitzvahs, there's no meshakela. You don't lose the feelings that you have, that you created, they stay with you. You create barren, and like I saw that she didn't even have a womb to have a baby. That also, Hashem gives that also to you, that you can have Ava V'yira. And then Mispah, your Mecha. When you count the days, your days, you count them, you make every day precious of doing what needs to be done, Hashem says, Amale, I'll fill it up. And therefore the evil will also be removed. Huh? Ratzav V'shuv, Surmeira V'asei Teiv. First, by the way, is the Aveda of Surmeira, and then V'asei Teiv. Because, to give you an analogy, if you're full of mud and you want to get dressed to go to a wedding, you can't put clothing on, nice, clean, expensive clothing on a dirty body. So first you got to get rid of all the garbage. You have to surmeira. You have to wipe away all the evil. Then you could do Vasei Teiv. So that's the Ratzav V'Sheiv. But the whole Maimon, was talking about all the other Maimon also. You have to have the longing, and at the same time the Shuv. And the way it is by Avram Zaki Baba Yomim, that every day is utilized. Morning.
I'm mesmerized.
Okay, stay there until tomorrow night. It's Mispah Yamecha Amale, so then you get the Yomim El Yainim, the Avaviyah from above, to reveal within the person. And in fact, I wanted to say something before, okay, whatever. But that's only, by the way, it's Mispah Yamacha Male. That's why part of the Loisia Mishakel of Akara is connected to Mispah Yamacha Male. The Jew has to utilize the time properly, and then you can come to this no Mishakel and Akara. Pirush Machla Shinogin. U'unya Maimed Azal. This is what the Gemara says, the famous Gemara in Bava Basra. Abba Meisu Be'ito Shel Nachash. 4 people died only because Hashem decreed death in the world by the sin of the snake. This is called Be'ito Shel Nachash. In fact, when the Ramak, the Meshul Kudavero, passed away, the Arizal was maspid him, and the Arizal said, 1 second. Ish kiyamus, the person dies, and then you hang him. Vasalisa eise alates, you hang him on a tree. So the Arizal was maspid the Ramak, the Meshul Kudavero. If a person dies, and you don't have what to, like, why this person so holy? Why did he die? He said, "Vasalisa eise, hang it on the tree," meaning say it's because of the Chetei Tzadas. Okay. So but the Gemara says there are 4 tzaddikim that the only reason they died, one was Binyamin. They're different people. Yishai. No. Anyway, so the Gemara says they only died because of Hashem. So the Alter Rebbe says, "Afal pi shem tzaddikim gemurim." The tzaddikim gemurim, why did they die from the snake? So the answer is, "Mikam makem nishabam adayin eze shemetz." Me'azum as hanachash In other words, and this is the atrocity of the Eitz Hadas, that it caused such a homogenation of good and bad in the world, that even if it's Tzaddik Gomor, they still have a residue, a slight residue, a shemetz of the Eitz Hadas. And therefore they died, even though they were mamish tzaddikim gumon, they wouldn't have died for any other reason. But the nachash, what does have to do with the nachash with them? The answer is that tumah still stays within the person and affects them.
Alright, it's perplexing God who is so merciful, exact such punishment for generations upon generations for what seems a minor infraction. Or
A minor infraction?
Why would you allow them to make
That was given one mitzvah. In 3 hours, the mitzvah would have been permitted.
That's how he created the man. I mean, that's
Why did
his
God?
capacity.
Okay, let me ask you a
Not
question.
saint.
Why did God? Chassidus explains. Why did Hashem create? Before Eitz Hadas, it didn't say that there was going to be death. Before Eitz Hadas, it seems that just in the Pshat of Chumash, he would have lived forever. People would have lived forever. You can imagine that, right? Anyway,
It's a harsh thing, Rabbi.
so what happened when Adam and Rishon sinned because evil came into the world? So Chassidus explains Hashem didn't want that evil to have eternity, so He made death that the person's evil is gotten rid of. Otherwise, if they would still be here, the evil would continue in the world. So a person dies. Okay, so that cleanses the evil. So that level of, that's why Adam Rishon was decreed death after the Eitz Hadas, because Hashem wanted that evil. So death, in that respect, was good for the world.
So why isn't it finished? A new opening
Yeah,
chapter.
Rabbi Harasina.
And people do
He's
not
waiting.
suffer
He's
for
waiting for you.
generations upon
He's
generations.
waiting for you to utilize your time that God gave you to the fullest.
Be patient. Be patient.
So all this world essentially until comes Beyat HaMashiach,
Well,
everybody suffers for just something that God could have avoided it to begin with.
So the moral of the story is, when we do actions, we have to realize that every action we do is eternal, has an effect on the world eternally. A parent that's on drugs, okay, and gives birth to a child, the child is going to be addicted, basically. So the question is, why should the kid suffer for what the parent did? What did the parent do?
Kids are
Or the kid's a mamzer. Why should the kid suffer what the parent did? It's his fault. He didn't know anything wrong. Yet he's mamzer. Yet the kid's addicted. Yet the kid is who knows what. What's the vart of the the original story of Chumash of Eitz Hadas teaches a person, just keep one thing in mind: anything you do is forever. When Cain killed Hevel, the pasuk says, "Curl the may achicha," the bloods. So Rashi calls them the measures, meaning bloods. The blood of your brother, the bloods. Because if Cain was killed, he didn't have kids, who didn't have kids, who didn't have kids, and who didn't have kids. So it's not, you're not shedding Cain's blood, you're shedding all the possibility generations, another 7 billion people that could have come from another one guy.
This is that God is dominated by vengeance and not kindness.
That's
Not merciful.
That's if you don't learn Chassidus. When you learn Chassidus, you realize that the God's punishment is not vengeance; it's cleansing. And sometimes when a clothing gets very, very dirty, you just can't put it into the washing machine. You need to scrub the collars and this and that.
That's what how Vatican justified all the atrocity. It's crazy.
Let me tell you a little secret. The Vatican's origin was a Jewish mamzer who happened to learn Torah. So what do you mean the Vatican says? Everything the Vatican has is from Torah.
Didn't they want to throw a kid out of the yeshiva and he went to the Rosh and said, if you throw...
Not the Rosh. He went to the Rebbe shop.
He said, my kids and the kids of my kids
It was Rabbi Yisrael Neveler.
Who was it?
Rabbi Yisrael Neveler.
Very, very smart.
When they threw, he was a very wild kid. He was my mother-in-law's uncle. You know Moshe Levin? He's a grandchild of Yisrael Neveler. His name was Levin. Anyway, so he was a very wild kid. very well. He used to get cats drunk and bring them into the yeshiva. I mean, it was a wild kid. So the previous Rebbe threw him out of yeshiva. The Friedrich Rebbe threw him out of yeshiva. And the Friedrich Rebbe just didn't throw people out of yeshiva. Verstehst du? You know, he wasn't Rebbe yet, but he was in charge of the yeshiva. So Yisrael Nevela said, I only agreed to leave, but I want to speak to the Rebbe Rashab first. I want to speak to the Rebbe. He was a Bachar. I want to speak to the Rebbe Rashab. So he said, okay, last wish. So he came into the Rebbe Rashab again. The kid had a lot of chutzpah. He said to Rebbe Rashab, I understand I did what's wrong, but let me ask you a question. If you throw me out of the yeshiva, I'm going to wander the streets. I'm going to become a nothing. And so my kids are nothing, and their kids are nothing. He says to Rebbe Rashab, are you going to take that responsibility? So the Rebbe Rashab took him back in, told the son to take him back in. Now, don't you think the Rebbe and the Friedrich Rebbe didn't know that? Don't you think the Rebbeim didn't know? The Friedrich Rebbe didn't know, even not as Rebbe yet, as Menal of the yeshiva. Don't you think he know that if you throw somebody out, what can happen? He didn't know that? Of course he knew. But in order to keep him, the request had to come from the person. The Rebbe Rashab Milmaila from above could say, yeah, keep him in the yeshiva. No, because the student had to become a keli to realize why he needs to be in yeshiva. That's the way Rabbeim work. It has to come from the mata. It has to come from the rotze. It has to be the longing. So he waited for that to happen. You have that countless of stories. Pesach Sheni. Why did Hashem just tell them Pesach Sheni? There's not too late. Because it had to come from the people. Lama Nigara. What's the whole lesson Pesach Sheni? It's never too late. You know what that phenomenal lesson? It's never too late. It's the essence of Torah. It's never too late. Tshuva. Yeah? Why did it have to come? Now why couldn't Hashem just tell the din to Moshe? Mainly everything else. Because certain things, like it's never too late, has to come from the person. Mamata l'mayla. Anyway, bu'iken nukud is klipa sagasas ruach. That's the fundamental point of the coarseness of evil. From the Eitadas, this is the coarse evil that each one of us possesses. That the person should see himself and recognize his fault. He should understand that it's good. And he says, Chava saw that the fruit was good to eat. That's the source of all impurity, that you think it's good. That you think it's good. And that's the source of all temptations and all avedas. So what happens in Eitzadas? Eitzadas created the ability and the need to choose between good and bad. Before the Eitzadas, like he says, they were naked and they weren't even embarrassed because there wasn't evil then. When they brought evil into the world, then they realized, like it says in the pasuk, okay, who told you you're naked? So the question, what do you mean, who told you you're naked? If before they didn't know they're naked and weren't wearing clothing? Of course they knew they weren't wearing clothing. What do you mean, who told you you're naked? The question is, even a blind person knows he's naked. I mean, what's the big deal? It means they only understood Elokus. So they had no understanding and concept of good and bad until the Eitzadas happened, when evil came into the world. So then they had this whole choice.
Rabbi, didn't Har Sinai...
Har Sinai undid the ego, undid Eitzadas, but the ego redid Eitzadas.
There's 2 more minutes.
Take it off my check.